Welcome back, everyone. Welcome. So I have two announcements and then a presentation. The first announcement is we are missing two of the translator machines. Yeah, you hear it? Who said "ho"? Those are the ones with them in their pockets, I'm sure. So if by mistake you took them with you, please, there's one there in the back, okay? And the other one is somewhere else? Okay, one is back. If you have it, if you find it somewhere, please bring it back to the room. Second announcement, there is a media wall on the website, and everything you post on social media with the hashtags International Tool Fair or hashtag ITF XV, it will go on this media wall. And later on, we will have a screen here also passing some of those images as well. Okay? Now presenting what matters. Today, TF Talker is a product and a tool of the European mobility programs. He combines concrete youth work with a more holistic community learning process. Known to some through training courses as BTM, Eye Opener, Tic Tac, the power of non-formal education, you get what you see. Ladies and gentlemen, my dearest Jo Claeys.
Good morning. My name is Jo, and I'm an addict. Yeah, I think some of you probably are thinking like, wow, I'm on the right spot, on the right place with this. But maybe let's rewind a bit. My name is Jo, still, and I'm still an addict. I've been active for more than 20 years in the European youth field, and I got quite addicted to the promotion of social values and rights and all those things that we like to write and say and think. But I got particularly addicted, I think, to the idea of it, to the idea that I was doing something that matters, something that was for the good, something for a better living together. And I think it's only last year, about 18 months ago, that I realized that actually I'm doing a lot of stuff in my practice that is counterproductive, and that the addiction is rather the idea than the action. And let's just take an example, I think very actual, especially this morning. Let's talk about inclusion, for example. I love inclusion. I like to be included. And I want to check that also with you. So if you like to be included, raise your hand. Look at that. I apologize. That was actually not a very inclusive question. Let's try this again. If you like inclusion, raise your hand and shout, hell yeah! Good. I'm sorry, my bad. Probably that was also not quite that inclusive, I would say. On a count of 3, let's try this. Raise your hand, yeah? Say hell yeah, and stamp your feet on the floor. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, wow. You love inclusion. I noticed that. You like to be included. Now, how inclusive is our work in reality? And that was also the question that bothered me, especially the last 18 months. And also, I went back and I said, interesting, it's a value inclusion. But strangely, it doesn't even belong to the 6 defined values of the European Union. They talk about the rule of law and those things, and freedom, but not of inclusion. Erasmus Plus program does that. It's everywhere. And I've been now assessing since 2014 youth exchange projects and mobility of youth workers, and I've noticed that everyone is doing it. Everyone is working on inclusion. Because you have to tick the box, otherwise you don't get funded. So that's a good sign. I mean, we're really focusing on that. I like that. Now, I want to take you also to my son, Leo, just turned 7. But about 3 months ago, he was with his mother, which is my wife, yeah, with his mother in the bathroom, and he made a serious complaint. He said, Mommy, you know what? I'm really tired. and I'm getting a bit upset because, you know, mommy, I always have to correct daddy's Portuguese. And I'm only 6. And he has been living in Portugal for more than 20 years. And when Rita, my wife, told me this, I started thinking, I realized that actually I stopped learning. And that was a conscious choice. I choose to stop learning better Portuguese because it's good enough for me. And that made me think also like, okay, we have the freedom to learn, or the right to learn at least, but we also have the freedom of choice not to learn. And in my case, that became also, I think, where I went a bit terribly wrong. Because my choice not to learn became easily the belief of no need to learn, in my case at least. And I became a bit, let's say, lazy and a bit sloppy, like, I know what I'm doing, you know? I've been doing this all the time. I work on inclusion basically all my life. That's what I do. That's my middle name. Now, I realized also that my definition of inclusion had become the definition of my inclusion. And let's be honest, with all my possibilities and to be honest, very little limitations, that's a quite limited view of a definition of inclusion, at least for me. So as an educator, a trainer, a youth worker, when this, let's say this online came online, yeah, that's quite obviously, online came online, I looked back at my own practice and I said, okay, what can I learn from this to have a refreshed look at my own tools, at my own methods that I kept using. And the online, to talk about that, was a big change for many of us, so also for me included. But when online started, I really, with the colleagues, we looked like, okay, this is something new. How can we make this as inclusive as possible? We were thinking about what would be the best easy times, what are the easy accessible tools to use, how to do the sound support materials, how to do all that to make it as inclusive as possible. We also noticed that quite some participants that participated to such online training courses wouldn't really come to a residential setting or training for whatever reason, personal or professional, because this online seemed necessarily to be also an inclusive way to include certain groups of people that otherwise wouldn't be there. And that also forced me to, let's say, to dust off, like we say, the tools. And then I was thinking of this kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, and that says like, okay, about inclusion, like if you want butterflies, then you have to plant flowers. And if you don't have flowers, there will be no butterflies. But maybe don't make the mistake like I thought, like there are no butterflies, so I don't need flowers. Because then for sure, I think there will be never butterflies in the first place. Ever, never, stuff like that. So these more than 20 years of doing things, I think were also a bit based on good intentions of like, what I think is good. Again, what is my definition of that? And I think like, no, inclusion is more than a value. Inclusion and inclusive should be an ongoing, conscious practice, let's say. And I'm thinking sometimes of very easy things, like how's the room setting? What colors are we using? How high hang we the flip charts? But those things, they don't come naturally anymore, at least with me. They got forgotten. And I think good intentions is interesting because you know the saying, the highway to hell and the stairway only to heaven, that's with good intentions. I was once on a conference which was particularly focused on inclusion, and the group was also absolutely built on that, let's say, that mixture. We had everyone, all minorities were present. And at a certain moment, people also had to present themselves, like how and what I stand for, how we work. And we created 3 lines, 3 ropes where people could hang it. A bit of an experiment. And even though everybody was there on the topic of inclusion, people automatically were hanging their flip chart exactly where they think it should be. But then people in motorized wheelchair, they were taken away from all the information on top. And then we also talked about it. How do we copy-paste certain things without really realizing that it can be different? And this copy-paste, that was what has bothered me at least. It was like, okay, I am fighting a certain system based on my idea of beliefs, and actually I might be reinforcing it all over again, particularly in my tools. I'm a lousy card player, and it's a pity because I love to play cards, but most of the time I throw cards away that I don't know which number it is because I'm left-handed. More than half of the decks is for right-hand players. I'm deprived of playing cards part of the time. Another example, somebody sent me once a photo of good intentions of a small community, a village, and they decided to translate their official documents into Braille. I thought, wow, that is really great. But it seemed to be quite expensive, so they said, okay, it's quite an investment, so let's plastify it and put it behind a glass window, so it doesn't destroy that easily. I think that's good intention. That counts for something, isn't it? Now, lately also, I've been analyzing a bit with myself what we call the suppression techniques. And there's a lot of study done on that, mostly how men suppress, let's say, mostly women in public events. And when I went over these suppression techniques, I realized I was doing all of them unconsciously already. And that frapped me in my face because I said, gee, I work on inclusion, and actually I'm promoting exclusion all the time. Just by these simple little things and this copy-paste behavior. That works, so I'll do that also. Now, today, as you notice, it's really about also how inclusive, exclusive are we really? And it's also an invitation for you to look back at your own tools, like how inclusive are they really? But also to the tools that are presented here in the next days. And not as with a judgmental eye, but really as a kind of a Sherlock Holmes that says, like, how could we maybe simply adapt that? And one of those things is, for example, dyslexie. The font called dyslexie. It's an existing font. You can download it for free. And actually, you could print everything simply in that. And that seems to really benefit for people who challenge dyslexia. But these are easy solutions. So also an invitation, let's have a look at that together. Now, I've noticed that my 7 offline tools, thanks to this learning of online, have become very close to my 7 deadly sins, in a way. And you know this saying, we don't give a fish because, anyone? Because we train to fish, isn't that? But we say we don't give a fish, and we're not going to train you to fish. We first want to rethink the fishing concept. And maybe that's something interesting also. Now, tools are absolutely, let's say, only an extension. It's something that supports us. But I do honestly believe, and I have forgotten that for a while, that the most powerful and the most valuable tool is us, is I, is you, is each one of us. That's the main tool. And yeah, basically, I am bold. Yeah. And I've noticed there are many people like me here. And in our little village, we have, and some of you know that because you became member by now, we have a League of the Bold. So we really have a club, a group of the bold, with t-shirts and all these gadgets. But important is to know, what do they say about people who are bold in front? It's people that think a lot. That's why they're bold in front. They think a lot. They're very smart people. And people who are bold in the back, it's said that they're very good in bed. And people like me, and many amongst us, who are bold in front and in the back, these are people that think they're good in bed. And so my invitation for you would be on the next days and in the future, like, try to be bold and bold at the same time. Because the slogan of our League of the Bolds is, everyone is bold somewhere. And that's the idea also. Now, what I also take from online, the experience, to the offline world, is this incredible, there you go, incredible power you have in online in controlling your image, in controlling your background, controlling the sound, you know, the camera, all these things. And I thought, I love that, but I don't have this in offline. So I think I want this in offline too. Thank you.
Thank you, Jo. Thank you so much. Um, Inspired by this talk, and before we move on to the workshops, we want to invite you to have a little chat, maybe with the person next to you, or a little, maybe make small groups as you feel like, about this, about how inclusive are your tools, and how can we look at tools in a more inclusive way. Is that okay? Just a few minutes, 5 minutes more or less, and then I'll come back here and can all go. Yeah, that works. All right. Just gather with whoever you want. Just around you. Don't leave anybody out. Be inclusive.
I saw the email today. I was supposed to go up because for the tool market. Was there any meeting upstairs or just if you have